La Gran Renuncia es auspiciado por Workation Planet, la agencia de retiros empresariales en los mejores entornos rurales de la Argentina. Si eres gerente de una empresa remota o híbrida, te ayudamos a fortalecer la conexión entre tus colaboradores compartiendo experiencias grupales únicas en un entorno de plena naturaleza. Y si eres nómada digital, te invitamos a sumarte a nuestra comunidad para descubrir los mejores destinos de Argentina mientras trabajas. Ingresa a www.workationplanet.co y entérate de todo lo que tenemos para ofrecerte. Workation Planet te invita a disfrutar el siguiente episodio de La Gran Renuncia.
Bienvenidos a un nuevo capítulo de La Gran Renuncia. Nuestra invitada de hoy es Maya Middlemiss. Realizó estudios en psicología y gerencia de empresas. Es escritora sobre temas relacionados al futuro del trabajo, futuro del dinero y otras áreas relacionadas. Ha escrito 2 libros sobre el trabajo remoto y es presentadora de un podcast en inglés titulado Futuro is Freelance. Ofrece asesoría y cursos para los que desean iniciar o desarrollar su vida como solopreneur o freelance. Maya es nacida en Inglaterra, pero vive actualmente a las afueras de Valencia, en España.
Bienvenidos a La Gran Renuncia, claves para una gerencia remota.
Maya, bienvenida y gracias por aceptar nuestra invitación.
Gracias, encantada.
Maya, antes que nada me da curiosidad por qué elegiste España, fuiste de Inglaterra a España, bueno, aparte del clima, de la comida, del vino español, o hay otras razones.
Pues disculpe, entiendes mi español es muy feo, so I will answer in English
No problem.
henceforth, as we discussed. We moved to Spain really for the family lifestyle because we had 2 young daughters and because we could both work remotely. We made a conscious choice of where do we want to live rather than where do we want to work. So we were able to choose to raise our daughters in a small Spanish town instead of in London. Now they're teenagers, they wish they were in London, but everything you do is wrong when you have teenage daughters. So I think we made the right choice.
¿Cómo es la vida cuando tú entiendo que eres slowmad, nómada digital, pero quedas en un tiempo determinado en una zona, con niños creciendo? ¿Cómo manejas esa situación? Porque me imagino que es un reto, ¿no? Cambiar de país, la cultura, etc.
We're not really digital nomads. We are very slowmads, is the phrase I like to use. We made one big change of country. That was big with young children. But since then, we've lived in Spain in different places. We've moved around, but we tried to keep consistency for them for school, with their friends, and to stay. We are now in another city than when we first arrived, but we haven't moved lots of times. And now we're at the stage where I have a home base here that I'm very happy with, and I can use that to travel to events and clients. And that's, for me, I'm not a nomad in my soul. I'm a remote worker. I love that my work is independent of location, but it doesn't mean I want to travel all the time. I like to travel and then come home. And I think that's the best for family life, for my family. Some people, they manage to make it work. Both my daughters are studying online now, but you know, they know where home is and they're happy there.
Maya, el título de tu podcast es El futuro es freelance. Bueno, la pregunta es justamente ¿por qué vos pensás o considerás que el futuro será freelance?
Well, I think that work needed to change. The traditional model that you work 100% of your time for one business and it's not your business, you have no ownership, somebody just pays you a salary. That's not the only way to work now. We have different structures, we have different ways. We can be consultants, we can be freelancers, we can be solopreneurs building a business of one. We can work more flexibly, for example, as a fractional executive within an organization. It's more flexible for the enterprise They don't have to imagine their work in 40-hour contracts where they own you. Instead, they might need me to write one white paper, then they can hire me for that instead of employing a senior marketing person to write stuff as it comes up. And the rest of the time, they still have to pay the salary and everything. For me, I prefer to work for lots of different clients. And I think that is the way work is going. It's more of a blend. In the past, we had entrepreneurs in one side and employees in the other, and there was a big divide, whereas now we have more of a continuum. You can be along that line. You can move. You could maybe have a retainer or an interim position for some months, helping a startup to launch, for example, and then you move on, or you're part of a different team here or there. And we have the structures for this. We have, for example, I'm an Estonian E-resident. Even though I live in Spain, my business lives in Estonia. That makes it very easy for me to write contracts with collaborators anywhere on the planet. And then we can do business however we want to. So we're not committing to each other. We're not getting married forever just because we want to do one piece of work. But then I can still develop a better relationship than just doing a single freelance gig.
¿Y es para todas las personas esta clase de vida? ¿Esta clase de trabajo freelancer?
Todas personas, I don't know. I mean, I think some people are very happy with a job which has got edges and they want to trade their time for money. They can do that at different levels. You can do that at a very high skill level if you have well-regarded professional skills, and then you go home at the end of the day, you don't think about the work, you can switch off. Lots of people will be happy with that. They might still be able to do it on a freelance basis, but on a gig project basis. Other people will always want to be thinking about the work, what they can add to it, how they can increase the value, what the future might be. And those people are probably better to be more entrepreneurial in their outlook. But I agree. My husband is a job person. He works remotely, but he works by the hour. And he provides a high level of customer support in a niche industry. And then he's finished and he logs out and he's done for the day. He will always be paid the same. He doesn't have to look for the next client. He doesn't have to think about the next project or the planning of the business. He just has to do his work. For me, I couldn't work like that, but we are all different.
Eso que comentas, como que he's done, o sea, que terminó su trabajo. Cuando tú estás trabajando desde tu casa, y creo que para los trabajadores remotos, se pueden llevarse el trabajo o la oficina o la empresa a la cama, ¿no? Porque tienes la posibilidad de estar conectada 24/7. Técnicamente puedes hacerlo. El problema es la desconexión. ¿Qué técnicas o qué puedes recomendar a las personas que están en esa misma situación como tú para desconectarse?
It's a very, very important question, because when work is a place that we go, we have a boundary because we leave the office, we leave our work. When work is with you on your phone, in your laptop, in your home, it's much harder. We have to make those boundaries for ourselves. So sometimes we have to invent them. I often, before I start work in the morning, I have a walk. Just go outside, just have a little bit of exercise in the morning when it's cool. Sometimes I do that in the evening in the winter, but here now it's summer in Spain, so I have to go early. And then at the end of the day, when I finish today, I will just have a ritual in my planner. I write what I will work on in the morning, so I don't have to keep it here. It's there on the paper. I can close that down, and then I close my windows on my desktop, and I'm finished. And then I'll step away. I'm lucky that I have a room dedicated for my office. I haven't always had that, but it's important for me to have that. So that's a physical boundary. I can close the door, work is done. At the moment, the door is closed, so nobody's going to come in here, Mom, with 100 questions, especially if I'm recording and streaming. They know that. So you have to make these boundaries. With everything in remote work, it doesn't happen by accident, you have to make it yourself, whether that's your social life, your self-care, your productivity. You have to become responsible for these things yourself. And it's very different to when you are working for somebody else who sets those boundaries. So it can all be done. It's the same with people say you don't have a social life because you don't have colleagues next to you. Well, you don't choose those colleagues. When you work remotely, you choose for yourself, but you still have to do it. No one will do it for you. Not everybody adapts well to that. Some people struggle with it and will prefer to go to an office with a built-in social life, with a built-in door, with a built-in log-in, log-off time. But if you can take control of it yourself, then that's actually really liberating.
El trabajo work from home, o sea, trabajo desde casa, y a veces se toma como literal en el sentido de que, si bien ocurre, ¿no? Se trabaja desde casa, pero en general, cuando se habla del tema, se piensa que siempre se trabaja desde casa. Y creo que sobre todo en Estados Unidos se trae el tema de la soledad, ¿no? Como que trabajas de casa y estás solo. Pero creo que, me parece, no sé qué piensas, pero que es más algo de Estados Unidos por la misma cultura. No sé si en España, que tienes esa experiencia, creo que hay más facilidad de la persona que, ok, trabaja desde casa, pero puede interactuar más y está menos el tema de la soledad. No sé si ves alguna diferencia con eso.
That's interesting because I've never lived or worked in the United States, but I do work with a lot of clients in the US because I work in technology. I think that what I'm experiencing with the clients I work with is that the cultures are blending more. They're becoming more consistent because people are collaborating internationally now. And I would say before the pandemic, there was more of this is the US business culture and this is a European business culture. Whereas now it's more of a blend and there's more intercultural understanding and sophistication. For example, in the US, there is still a greater tendency to talk very positively about money, about profit, about growth. Sometimes in the EU, in the UK, we're inhibited to talk about money, but we have to if we're freelancers. We have to talk about the money, otherwise we don't eat. So there is more of a blending of culture. And then being in Europe, it's great because I can collaborate with all sides of the world. So sometimes I'm working with clients in Asia who might have different cultural expectations and norms, and you have to make sure that you're aware of their holidays and religious significant events and so on, and also just to make sure that you're communicating with the right level of context. But people are also humans. We are understanding. We can, like we discussed for this broadcast, we'll do a bit of English, bit of Spanish. We can find our meeting place in the middle, and most people, I think, are like that now in an international world.
En uno de tus artículos, Maya, hablas de la importancia de la creatividad en el trabajo remoto. Entonces yo te pregunto, ¿por qué pensás que es importante la creatividad en el trabajo remoto? Y también te agrego, ¿por qué no? ¿Por qué es importante la creatividad en la gerencia remota?
I think you have to be able to solve problems quite independently when you're working on your own. So you have to be creative, you have to be a bit experimental, because even if you're an employee working remotely, things can go wrong. Maybe you have a technical problem. You can't just pick up the phone and get the IT department to come. Sometimes you have to develop more of a creative mindset. Even if your work is very routine, you have to have some initiative to try and solve a problem for yourself, even if it's just being able to figure out how to get online so someone can remote in and fix your computer. If you can't do that first bit, you can't do any work. Or if you drop your laptop out of the window or something, and you have to solve that local problem. And that's the price of being able to live where you want. You can't just shout for help all the time because your printer is jammed again. All these in the office, somebody is fixing your printer and they're ordering the new printer ink before it runs out, and there's somewhere you can go for tea and coffee, or if your coffee runs out at home, you have to go and get it. And it's a small price, actually, to have your own coffee in your own mug, in your own garden. It's well worth it. But for some people, they prefer everything done for them, then they'll be happier in an office, I guess.
¿Se necesitan nuevas habilidades para comenzar a trabajar en este nuevo escenario del trabajo remoto?
I think it's a combination of skills and more innate qualities and characteristics that some people will find it easier to develop those skills than others. But some people are more independent minded. You do need to be able to focus and manage yourself because there's no one watching you. If you have quite long deliverables, because I'm a freelance writer, my clients might not, they give me a brief and then maybe the deadline is in 2 or 3 weeks. So if I just did no work for 2 or 3 weeks, I'd have nothing to show at the end of it. I have to manage my time, and I might have 4 or 5 different projects going on in 1 month. So you have to be able to manage that time to one extent or another, depending on what your work is. You're less likely to have any kind of manager saying, right, what are you doing today? What are you doing now? Have you done that thing yet? Some people don't function well without that. And some of that, it doesn't have to be a human manager. It can be an app or some kind of collaboration tool. But some people need more structure than others. The people who will thrive in remote work, I think, are generally good at motivating themselves, at managing themselves. And as we were saying before, at protecting themselves, at knowing their boundaries, knowing their limits. You can't be a martyr at remote work. No one's going to come and say you're working too hard. Whether you're an employed or freelance, no one's going to say that to you. So you have to be the one that says, right, I'm done. I'm finished now. Or this piece of creative work is good enough. Because if you're writing or you're designing or programming, probably it could always be improved. You could always do something even better. But when you know you have a deadline and you have other work in your pipeline, you have to be able to say it's adequate, it's sufficient, and hand it in and be confident in that and then move on. So there are a number of qualities you have to develop, I think.
Maya, antes de la pandemia ya habían empresas, de la pandemia del COVID, habían empresas trabajando remoto, algunas, pero bueno, producto de la pandemia, muchas empresas se sumaron a esta modalidad de trabajo remoto. Y ahora que volvió la normalidad, si bien empresas grandes ofrecieron que se iba a continuar el trabajo remoto, muchas están diciendo no, vuelvan a la oficina. ¿Cuáles crees son las razones que hay ese cambio de las empresas que están buscando que los empleados, los trabajadores vuelvan físicamente a las empresas?
It's very interesting because I've been writing and talking about remote work for 20 years. And I never imagined we could have this incredible natural experiment that we had in the pandemic. You can't plan or imagine something like that. And now so many people have had a trial of working from home. Not proper remote working because we were in lockdown. It's not the same. I can take my laptop to the cafe or the garden. I can take it on a trip. That's not what we had. And some people had a very bad experience. Some employees had a bad experience. Some managers had no idea how to manage their team at a distance. Some people didn't have the right equipment. They didn't have childcare. Their children were trying to study, and people were anxious and fearful, and some of them were sick. So it was a terrible experiment in lots of ways. But for other people, they can see, all right, the pandemic was terrible, lockdown was terrible, but the work from home bit, I like that. And I can do it. The work carried on. It didn't compromise the productivity or the connection. So some of those people are now being told, come back to the office. We've got this lovely office for you. It's empty. Please come. And they don't want to go. And some do. But I think the reasons, it's very hard now for a manager to say, you have to come back because we can't work like this. We have been working like this for 2-3 years now. So that argument is gone. You have to come up with something better. Maybe you have to come up with a better experience in the office. You have to use that time to be more collaborative, to interact more. There's no point traveling for an hour to a city center to sit in a cubicle and email people. You can do that anywhere. If you're going to travel and see your colleagues, then you should use that time creatively and synergistically to work together and build something together. It's far more appropriate than doing it from a distance. And the other thing is, you know, companies have a long history and they have investment in these office buildings, this commercial real estate in Valencia, in London. I'm sure it's the same in Cordoba. There's these big buildings and they're empty and they're expensive, you know. So what are people going to do? I know that HSBC Bank in London is closing down a huge building that they had a 20-year lease on. They're not going to renew it. It's like 43 million pounds of real estate. Now, what's going to happen to that office? I don't know. But HSBC have said we're going to get somewhere smaller or we'll get some regional centres. People can come in, but we're not going to try and get everybody into the centre of London again because they don't want to come and it's too expensive. So I think the long-term effects will be, it's very disruptive. Cities are going to change. There will be lasting changes to the usage of city centres. Maybe people will even live in cities again instead of just going to work there. I think that could be an exciting, positive outcome. In the same way that we had industrial cities, the factories and warehouses, lots of those now are luxury apartments and penthouses. They've just been repurposed. And I think we'll see the same thing happening with office units in time. And people will be able to live where they choose and access everything they need. And they'll be close enough to their colleagues to go and brainstorm or collaborate or socialize, enjoy time together face to face when they want to. And they will always want to do that, just not every day.
Si te gusta nuestro contenido, te pedimos que nos ayudes a difundirlo siguiéndonos en Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube o desde la plataforma que nos estés escuchando. También puedes suscribirte a nuestro newsletter podcastlagranrenuncia@gmail.com y te haremos llegar todas las novedades acerca de gerenciamiento y trabajo remoto. Seguimos escuchando La Gran Renuncia.
Sí, ahí en Nueva York está pasando mucho que... más que todo el centro que era para lugares para trabajar, se está convirtiendo, como dices, en lugares de vivienda. Y la modalidad de híbrido, ¿qué opinión le das a eso? Bueno, obviamente cada empresa es particular, cada situación es particular, pero digamos en una situación donde se puede trabajar 100% remoto en la empresa, pero se busca que sea híbrido, por decir, bueno, vienen martes, miércoles, jueves. ¿Cómo ves esa idea de mezclar híbrido con remoto en situaciones donde puedes estar remoto?
Híbrido, hybrid working, it can be the worst of all because then you have to live near to New York and you have to rent an apartment in an expensive place, but you have to have space for your desk and a little office at home. You can't go and move to the coast or move to South America or Europe. Also, it feels like it's not about the work. This policy, you are allowed these days in the office, these days at home. It feels it's not about the productivity or the people. Somehow it's about using the office space where we have this lease. We're going to have hot desking. People can come in. People end up, there's not much good research yet because we haven't been doing this for long. But I think what we're going to see is, again, it's like the employment entrepreneurship thing. It's a spectrum from complete remote first mindset to everybody in the office. Híbrido occupies that whole bit in the middle, and it can be really flexible. We have an office, you can come in, you can book meetings there, you can come when you want to collaborate on something, come whenever you want. Or it can be at the other end, right? You are a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday person. You must come, whatever work you're doing, whatever your diary looks like that day, you have to do it here. And that seems really inflexible. And it's about permission rather than what you need or what the work demands. And those offices are really, they might as well all be in the office together. And I don't think that's going to last well. Also, hybrid, it can be very difficult for managing meetings, managing events. When you have some people who are in the room, some people at a distance, they can be disadvantaged. They don't hear the meeting before the meeting or the meeting after the meeting, and they can be left out of the loop of crucial conversations. It's very hard to manage well. I'm sure some people are managing it well, but lots aren't. And lots of people will end up, I predict, either saying hybrid's a disaster, remote's a disaster, everybody in, or they would say, right, forget it, remote first is the future, and maybe you can just come in for meetings when you want to. But I think forcing people in on some kind of inflexible rota, it's not going well.
¿Y qué opinás de las llamadas experiencias de workation o los también llamados retiros empresariales?
Yeah, I think it's great. I love working from home and I love being a solopreneur, but I also love meeting other people. I'm a very sociable person. I love spending time at events. I'm going to Nomad City in Gran Canaria next week. It's going to be a big conference of digital nomads and remote workers. It's fantastic. I love that kind of interaction. And I think it's really important people understand just because you work remotely, you still love to work with other people. You just don't all go to one office to do it all the time. You know, there are so many ways we can go to co-workings. We can go and stay in another country and work with collaborators who are in the same industry as you, but with a very different perspective. You can learn and refresh so much. So I think we're going to see more and more of these workation kind of solutions. And we'll see more businesses emerging to support that as well. There is a wonderful camping site in France where they have children's facilities and camping and glamping and yurts and things like that. And now they've built a co-working there so parents can go and have a holiday. The children are running outside and making friends, but the parents can work, or they can take turns to work and then go and have a break. So we're going to see all these things blending together. It's not a fixed boundary between work and vacation, or employee or entrepreneur, or office or not office. You know, work, when the work is separate from a place, there's so many possibilities to do interesting things, including travel. We have to see now just the regulation catch up. The technology is there. Technology is good. It's all fixed. We can get online from a tiny device anywhere in the world pretty much, but we can't necessarily, we might not have the right visa, or we might not have the right permission or the right business structure or the right employment contract. So these things are coming more slowly, but they're coming.
¿Y cómo pensás que se pueden integrar los trabajadores remotos o los freelancers latinoamericanos en el mercado europeo? ¿Hay lugar para los latinoamericanos en este escenario europeo?
Sí, ¿por qué no? You are Spanish speaking, the second biggest language in the world. There's always demand for that. I know that Estonian E-Residency, because I'm an envoy for the Estonian E-Residency program, they have collection points in Brazil. So you can open a business in Europe. You don't even have to go to Europe. You can just go to Brazil to get your identity card, and then you have access to the whole EU market. I think there's lots of possibilities, especially for the Spanish-speaking world. Definitely, people would like to hire, if you're in the US, but you have Spanish-speaking customers, it makes more sense to hire somebody to collaborate in Latin America because you're in the time zone instead of in Europe. Then, you know, you're not overlapping enough with the hours. So I think there's definitely room for Latin America to take a bigger part of that world. And also we're starting to see some digital nomad visas in the Americas. In Central America, Brazil has a digital nomad visa. Does Argentina have one? I know Colombia. So that means people can come and stay and work and enjoy the natural beauty of different countries, and they bring that income with them. They bring the work with them. You don't have to build factories and offices to get people to come and settle. So I think global mobility will see us break down these barriers, and it won't matter where you're from or where you're going. It will just matter that you're doing the work and you're a citizen of the world.
Sí, y súper interesante. Y esta experiencia con E-Residence de Estonia, ¿qué es la que dirías la mayor ventaja de tener eso?
Well, Estonia is a very interesting country. It is the most digital country in the world. Everything about their governance and their structure is online. So what they decided to do 7 years ago was open that up to foreigners so that they could become e-residents. And the biggest advantage, the reason most people become e-residents of Estonia, is so that they can open a business, which they can do extremely quickly, extremely affordably, and then they can administer the whole thing online. So if you're in South America, you can become an Estonian e-resident and have an EU-based business, so that your business is in the EU, you operate in euros, you have the trust and all the opportunities of that environment, which can include EU funding, different grants and collaborations, incubators. All of that is accessible through your company. It means you can deal in euros. It doesn't matter what your currency is or your customer's currency, because it makes it very easy to collaborate worldwide. For me in Spain, I went down that route because it was quicker and easier to open a company. I needed a company quickly for a freelance project some years ago. And I was very interested in the digital infrastructure of Estonia anyway. So I went down that route. And now I've ended up doing more work in Estonia. It's led me to go that way because of what they're doing in the future of work and the business culture I find very fascinating. So I was proud to be appointed an envoy for the program earlier this year, and I visited Estonia for their big innovation festival, Latitude 59. I love Estonia's business culture and climate, but I don't like their physical climate. I don't think I would survive the winter. So I can have my home in Spain and my business home in Estonia. Then that's the perfect expression of this global world that we live in.
Sí, ya tuviste los winters en Inglaterra suficiente, ¿no?
Yes, that was bad enough. And Estonia is much further north. So it's lovely in the summer. It's like you have like 19 hours of daylight. It's beautiful.
Sí, ese país de verdad que se adelantó muchísimo con toda esta proyección hacia el futuro. ¿Y qué recomendarías a las personas que trabajan presencial en una empresa y quieren trabajar remoto? El diálogo con el gerente, el director, porque hay desconfianza. Bueno, las empresas piden al empleado que confíe en la empresa, pero la empresa no confía en el empleado y se tiene que generar un diálogo ahí. ¿Qué recomendarías en esos casos?
It's very difficult. Probably during the pandemic, you have already proven you can do the work. So that's a strong argument to say, well, what was the problem then? Was there something that I was less productive, that you felt I wasn't accountable, whatever? Tell me what that is, and we can fix that. Maybe we need different technology. Maybe we need a different protocol to communicate. Then I think it's very hard now for any manager to say it just doesn't work. So I think it's fair to ask why, what's not working, and then we can fix that. Years ago, one of the first books I read about remote work was Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, a very iconic digital nomad book now, but he talked about working from home by stealth. So you say to your boss, oh, I have an appointment in my house. The plumber is coming to repair something, so I need to work from home. And then you have your best day ever. You're so productive. You're so amazing at home. And then you say, oh, he's got to come back next week. Is it okay? Well, actually, I find I work very well at home. And you kind of introduce it like that. I don't think we should have to play those games now in 2023. You know, we should be able to treat our managers more fairly. We're all grown-ups. We know why we want to work remotely. Let's make the business case for it. Let's overcome any difficulties. And for some people, that might mean they have to change jobs. If they really want it enough, then they might have to change to an employer with a different culture. But gradually, employers will realize they are losing the best talent in that way. And hopefully, attitudes will continue to change. I think, you know, even in some industries like banking and finance, high compliance industries, very regulated, they're solving the problems. The technology exists now to do that work remotely. So there's no excuses, really. Maybe the managers aren't confident to manage at a distance. They never learned how to manage a distributed team. That definitely happened in the pandemic. There were managers who were years and years of experience, but only in managing people they could see. And when they were managing a team they couldn't see, they really had a lot of problems. So there's work to do, but you can really truly build a business case for it, including simply the cost. Okay, you don't have to rent me an office. I'm going to give you space in my home as a gift to you, my company. So why can't we try this for 6 months and measure my productivity? We can measure anything now. Find the right metrics, the right KPIs, and then you have your proof. And if they say, oh, it's the culture and all these woolly things, you say, all right, well, we have to solve for that. We have to figure out some off-site retreats or workations or ways to connect and do things differently. But all of these problems can be overcome. And if they can't be overcome where you're working, maybe you need to work somewhere else or be freelance.
Yeah. Hablabas antes de Tim Ferriss, lo mencionabas, y la pregunta es si hay algún otro autor que vos puedas recomendar, que puedas sugerir, algún libro acerca del trabajo remoto o también acerca de la gerencia remota, algún libro o autor que te haya cautivado en este sentido.
Oh, there are so many. The trouble with, I haven't written any books for a few years now because books are too slow. The books are, you finish it and then it's fixed and then next week it's superseded with some new information. So I tend to get most of my information now from podcasts, from social media, from blogs. I still love books. You can see books are a part of my life, but for when it comes to the future of work, it's moving so fast that to write a book is like to take a photo. It's just, whereas really we're in a high-speed movie and the photo will be out of date. So you have to follow the right people, the right programs, the right vlogs, the right newsletters to keep getting information. I wrote an article last month about digital nomad visas and it was published last week. It's already out of date, because Canada just announced a new digital nomad visa this week. And this huge paper, it was like 5,000 words. It took me weeks to write and research and edit. And it's out of date. So, you know, I wouldn't buy a book.
¿Y hay alguna herramienta tecnológica también que puedas recomendar para aquellos que quieran trabajar remoto?
Again, the tools and the apps are changing so fast. And there are so many now. And it's easy, lots of them do very similar things. So it's difficult to choose. I would say if you're choosing a tool to collaborate, to communicate, to work together, you need to be very clear what you want it to do. What are the top functions? And then go and look what the simplest tool to deliver that. Because there's always a cost. They say, oh, it's a free trial. Of course, it's free, but your time is not free to learn and adapt your work to a new tool. So you have to be very, very clear what the benefits are. And then you should probably stick with your tool. Don't change all the time. Oh, there's a new shiny thing. It does this, it does that. Usually the basic ones, I mean, what do I use all the time? I use Zoom. I use Slack. Because I'm a freelancer, I use what my clients use. One client is all Microsoft. But okay, that's they're the clients. So of course I use Teams to work with them, whatever the client uses. So I like Google Suite. I think the combination of, or Google Workspace now it's called. But we know Google can change their products overnight. They could come along and say, Docs is finished, or you know, their RSS reader disappeared a few years ago. Slack I use a lot. Again, I don't use my own Slack. I use client Slack for different things. All the different social media tools, email. All these things have to serve you. I think you need to be clear about the functions, what you need it to do for you, and then choose the tool that does that, because they all do similar things. And it needs to be very obvious for your team. Where do we do a certain thing? We always have our meetings in Zoom. We always have our threaded conversation in Slack. We never email internally. We do it in Slack. To have that expectation, so you don't send an email when the building is on fire. Everybody knows that you don't, that's not what that's for. In the same way, you don't WhatsApp the chief executive to say you're popping to the shops. You know, we can have lots of different ways to communicate, but we need to agree how we're going to use that. And then we can have a happy team and we all know what to expect.
Sí, Maya, escuché un par de tus podcasts, me gustaron muchísimo. O sea, de verdad, hay un contenido de mucha calidad. Y escuché el de que es de introvertidos. Y me gustó mucho, me ayudó mucho. De hecho, me trajo una idea sobre cuando uno viaja como nómada digital. Bueno, todo el tema de los networking que hay, que existen. Me puse a buscar y hay muchísimos networkings. Pero, ¿qué tips le puedes dar a las personas que son introvertidos y trabajan desde su casa? ¿Cómo lo...? Bueno, que escuchen el podcast, pero en pocas palabras, ¿qué pudieras decir sobre eso?
Yeah, I mean, working from home is brilliant for introverts. If you can arrange your life, your career to work from home, then that's perfect, because you don't have people pulling your energy all the time in a busy office or transport. But you still can't work in a vacuum. You do have to build a network. You have to talk to people. You have to find ways to make that safe and comfortable. I'm talking to you now, you're in Argentina, but I'm in my home, so I feel very calm. I feel very safe. It's lovely to meet you and interact with you. I don't have to travel to Argentina to do that. If there is a nice conference in Argentina, maybe I will get on a plane, but it will cost me a lot of energy. It will cost me a lot of time, a lot of money, but as well, because I'm an introvert, it will cost me more. So I need to be very clear of the cost benefit. I'm going to meet Christian and Robert, then yes, that's a brilliant benefit. Maybe some other people, maybe they want to give me some work. Maybe it's well worthwhile. But I also know when I went to Estonia in May, it was wonderful. But I took 2 or 3 days when I got home before I really did some productive work, because I was exhausted. I had such a good time, but it took all of that energy out of me, and I just needed to relax and be calm at home. Some people gain energy from other people. That's amazing. They're extroverted. They thrive on that. Introverts aren't shy or antisocial. We need our time alone, but we make good writers. We make good podcasters. Podcasting's quite solitary in lots of ways. But the other thing to remember is, if we are introvert, we are extrovert. That's just our preferred natural style, but we can act against that. We can decide, I mean, I'm as well as introversion, I have some social anxiety, but if I've traveled to another country to be at an event, I will speak to people. I will force myself to go against my nature, just that threshold to go and say hello. And then after that, it's fine. So don't put yourself in a box. Don't put limits because you think, oh, I'm very shy, I'm very introverted, I'm very quiet, I don't have confidence or whatever. Okay, you haven't got confidence, so pretend that you have. Act like you have. Say hello to that stranger. Something amazing could happen. Or it could be very boring, and then you just say hello to another stranger in 5 minutes. But you got to give it a try. You've got to put yourself out there. It's harder for us introverts, for sure, but we can do it.
En Argentina hay una conferencia Nomads VA, Nomads Buenos Aires, cada año. Ahora fue recientemente, so hopefully next year you come visit Argentina.
Pero tengo que hablar en español, ¿no? ¿O es en inglés?
You speak very good Spanish.
No, profesionalmente no, es difícil. No podría hablar este podcast todo en español.
Ok. But tú tienes los 2 libros publicados en una página web que se llama Healthy, Happy Homeworking. Me dio curiosidad la parte de healthy. ¿Por qué healthy? ¿Hacia dónde va eso?
Well, health is everything, really. We can't do our work, we can't build relationships, we can't have fun unless we're healthy. And I don't just mean physical health, also our mental health, our emotional health, our cultural health. Lots of these things can suffer when we're working from home. During the lockdown, lots of people, did the homeworking, but they weren't happy and they weren't healthy. They were stuck, basically. They didn't exercise, they didn't eat well, they didn't brush their hair or, take the self-care. And this does affect how you feel. And I think, again, if you're going to the office, well, you have to walk to the station or the bus, you have to wear a particular dress code or so on. These things are forced for you. When you're working from home, you have to do it for yourself. You have to decide, okay, today I'm going to get my exercise by doing this. I'm going to get my self-care. I'm going to get my social connection by going to this evening class later because I need to speak to somebody, not just the cats, but humans. I need to go out. So all of these things are part of working from home. It can be, some people work from home because they're really shy and introverted. That's fine, but you still have needs. You need to know what you need to do healthy, happy home working. And I wrote those books around the pandemic. I called it a series, but there's only 2 so far because afterwards there was quite a pushback on working from home. Everyone was, we don't want to work from home. We want to be digital nomads. We want to travel the world. And yeah, okay. I still love working from home. I work from home 95% of the time. Home is where all my stuff is. It's easy. It's convenient. I've got my super wide monitor so I can have all my research. When I travel, I have a little netbook, little MacBook, and I can work on that, but I don't want to write something complicated. I don't want to be doing planning work on it. I can work in the airport. I can work in a co-working, I can work in a cafe. But for me, I've always been a work from home person. But that's because I started 23 years ago. There was no digital nomads 23 years ago. You had a big box and it plugged into the wall with an Ethernet cable, and you had a modem, and you had to switch the phone off to get your email. And there was no mobility. There was, our mobile phones were these things that you just spoke on. You couldn't run your business on it. So that's my modality. That's what I got used to. I love that we have choice now, but I will still defend home working as it's perfect for me. It's perfect for lots of people. And it's usually part of most people's mix from working from home. So even though we have co-workings and everything else now, I have a co-working up the road. I go there sometimes because they have nice coffee. It's a friendly place. Or we had some builders in the house and they were cutting tiles and just making so much noise and mess. I thought, no, I'm just going to go up the road for a week. And it was fine. I got some work done. I wasn't at home, but I had to come and make sure they were doing the right things at home at the builders. So it's great to have choice. It's great that I can just pick up my laptop and go somewhere else. But I will always love working from home. I think I've chosen where my home is. It's in this beautiful city, and I've got a comfortable office now. I know what I need. So if you love working from home, there will always be a place for you in the world.
Maya, ¿cómo se podrían comunicar con vos los oyentes? ¿A través de qué medios?
The best place to find me online is probably LinkedIn. You can always find me there if anybody wants to get in touch. You can follow the podcast as well. That's The Future is Freelance. At the website futureisfreelance.xyz. If you're in Spain, we have a lovely Facebook community, Remote Work Spain, where I'm trying to help more people living in Spain find remote work. Mostly they're English speakers, they're international workers, and trying to connect them with opportunities around the world. But LinkedIn is the best place. My name, Maya Middlemiss, is unique on the internet. So if you find that name, it's me. So on all the social networks, I'm afraid it's all me. So if you can find me, you found me.
Maya Middlemiss, muchas gracias por haber estado en La Gran Renuncia.
It was my great pleasure. Thank you very much for including me.
Thank you, Maya.
Escuchábamos a Maya Middlemiss. Ella, es podcaster, redacta artículos, es escritora, tiene newsletter, tiene de todo, una gran difusora del trabajo remoto. Ella es inglesa, pero en este momento vive en España. Gentilmente nos ha dado este tiempo para esta charla que realmente ha pasado por muchas aristas. Yo veo, Robert, desde adentro de lo que es el trabajo remoto, ¿no? Se han tocado temas como, por ejemplo, el mito de la soledad. Estuvo muy interesante esa cuestión de la soledad, que es un tema de debate con respecto al trabajo remoto, pero vos lo vinculaste a algo cultural, ¿no? La diferencia entre Estados Unidos y Europa, si era más de Estados Unidos sentirse solo, si en realidad la soledad es una percepción cultural más que una consecuencia del trabajo remoto. Eso me resultó muy, pero muy interesante, y también cómo ella, no sé si decir defiende, pero por lo menos promociona o divulga esta postura de que el trabajo remoto no es el fin de todo, como quieren plantear algunos en algunos debates ahora, ¿no? Como que que el trabajo remoto terminó, que el trabajo remoto ya no va para más y hay que volver a la oficina, sino que Maya, sigue divulgando y sigue viendo las diferentes aristas. Hablamos también de la creatividad que se necesita para poder llevar adelante, tanto para ser un gerente como para ser un colaborador en un equipo. Se necesita creatividad porque, claro, va surgiendo un montón de cosas no resueltas o no preestablecidas, frente a la cual tenemos que difundir diferentes estrategias, planificar, pensar nuevas ideas. En una palabra, ser creativo. Así que la verdad es que la entrevista con Maya fue distinta en este sentido, muy profundo en lo que es trabajo y gerencia remota, y fue un placer hacerla. Robert.
Sí, sin duda, y también la experiencia que ella aporta desde el trabajo desde casa, con todas las rutinas o disciplinas que son importantes tener en cuenta, y su experiencia también con esta posibilidad de ser residente virtual, digamos, en Europa, en el sentido de crear una empresa virtual y tener toda la documentación legal para poder, como nómada digital o simplemente como trabajador remoto o trabajador desde la casa, tener una formalidad con el registro de una empresa y no trabajar como un individuo, sino ya como una empresa. Y Estonia, en este caso, tiene una solución para esto, y ella tiene bastante experiencia que nos aporta sobre este tema.
Sí, el caso de Estonia es un caso muy, pero muy interesante para quizás dedicarle un episodio en próximos capítulos de La Gran Renuncia, porque realmente la experiencia de Estonia es muy, pero muy buena. Amigos, hasta acá ha sido La Gran Renuncia. Para comunicarse con nosotros lo pueden hacer a nuestro mail podcast, lagranrenuncia@gmail.com. Por favor, si quieren ayudarnos, si quieren recibir este episodio todas las semanas, pueden hacer clic en seguir en Spotify, o estamos también en YouTube. Ahí pueden seguirnos, y todas las semanas van a recibir nuestras novedades. Los nuevos episodios van a ser mencionados a través de esas redes. Si ustedes nos siguen, hagan un clic en la campanita, y estamos creando esta comunidad del trabajo remoto. Amigos, muchísimas gracias. Esto ha sido La Gran Renuncia. Hasta el episodio que viene.
Escuchaste La Gran Renuncia,
un podcast producido por Roberto Schlesinger y Cristian Curto. Si te gustó, hace clic en el botón seguir y nos vemos en el próximo episodio.